Hello everyone and welcome back to the WoW News, where there has been a lot, which is why we're doing it on Wednesday. Seriously, numbers have came in showing that World of Warcraft is actually doing tremendously well by the numbers, seemingly even thwacking Legion, which is, quite something. Then, Season 1, it began. There's a bunch to know and a bunch of interesting data, because we can now see players' Covenant choices per spec and at scale for thousands and thousands and thousands of people. So, it's a pretty fun time. There's so much to get to, and if you like your own fun time, hit up the Patreon, because this month's loot is pretty damn epic. The DK pin is, I love how the DK class pin came out, and of course, art sticker as well. All very good. Also, I've just lived 2 vlogs, and I'm going to be doing a big behind-the-scenes project on our team workflow rebuild, so if you're a productivity junkie, stand by. There's going to be some real cool stuff coming. Patrons, you've been awesome. You've been incredible this year. Thank you for your support, and let's get into the WoW news. All right, let's just get right into the big one. Shadowlands sold through 3.7 million units as of the end of day 1. Now, this is actually, according to Activision, the fastest selling PC game of all time, beating Diablo 3's 3.5 million, which was indeed the previous record. Now, this is something that has a lot of people scratching their heads, because they're thinking about, surely PUBG exploded, and then a whole bunch of other games exploded, and the last few years has been full of these big explosive games. Well, I think there's some reasons that we can get into, but there is more data to do first. Engagement and subscribers are at the highest point in a decade. Now, I thought that was very interesting wording from the investor relations press release from Activision. However, when you think about it, it's a bit weird. I initially thought, they've said in the last decade, because that just means in the post-Wrath period, and Wrath was the peak. But no, when you actually look at the quarterly numbers of World of Warcraft, Q4 2010 was still like 12 million subscribers, and I think it was 11.4 million subscribers as of Q1 of 2011. And what that basically tells us is, World of Warcraft is around 11 to 12 million subscribers right now, which does mean that it is approaching, it seems, lifetime highs in terms of subscribers. Also, time actually spent in-game is at their all-time highest, and it is in fact, all-time highest in the last decade, which is the number they gave, and it is actually up 2x year over year, which again is pretty damn impressive. I think that does show Shadowlands doing well. Also, Classic doing really well and having quite a bit of staying power. Now, a lot of people are thinking, this seems like a load of bull. They could just make this stuff up and say it. Yes, they could. But what would happen is if they did that, they'd say this, their stock would get pumped, then negative market research would come out, short sellers would come in, and then the SEC would probably investigate them for misleading investors. So it's a sort of thing where if you are lying in your investor relations posts in a way that could be seen to, be misrepresenting your position, then you're going to get in trouble with the, Securities, Commission. So I think it's the sort of thing. Can they directly lie? No, not really. Can they cherry pick data that looks good for them? Yes, they can. And there are a few caveats. Like, we should note here, free to play does mean that sold through units on day 1 is a less relevant metric, right? In a world where you've got Fortnite and I guess Roblox with their IPO, League of Legends and stuff like that. Yeah, those things are going to, I think, crush World of Warcraft in a bunch of numbers because of these humongous free-to-play games. But 12-ish million subscribers, that is absolutely massive. And this is actually something that really counts in. Shadowlands did really well in pre-orders. We know these stats from previously. However, the thing is, the WoW audience is not super interested in playing Shadowlands 3 months after it comes out. No, if you're a WoW player and the new WoW expansion comes out, you're going to be getting it. Right? That's just the way it works with World of Warcraft. So I think that WoW humongously front loads its actual expansion sales and will have a faster fall off than other games. I don't think it's a situation like if you look at the sales curve of PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, where it was just high and then stayed high for an extremely long amount of time. So yes, WoW's got this fixed, highly engaged, highly retained audience and will be massive in day 1. And of course, they'll also benefit from all the people they got in via Classic. And yeah, another thing, this is real big, since its peak in the Wrath of the Lich King, late Wrath era, World of Warcraft is now a more deeply monetized game. You've got to remember, if somebody is actually getting game time via WoW token, Blizzard are making an extra $5 premium or whatever it is on every, on everything, right? Because WoW Token subscription does, 1 month of WoW Token sub versus, credit card sub. The WoW Token one makes Blizzard more money because of like the token tax, whatever. So you've got that working at a fundamental level. You've got the store, you've got way more mounts, you've got the 6-month deals, the promotions. They're just doing all of that stuff way, way, way more. So this is obviously incredible for World of Warcraft's financial position. This, of course, has also led to people, posting tweets of this news side by side with, like the Blizzard pay rate being not particularly great for their area of California, and just some issues that are going on there. Another thing I should note is that a lot of these numbers are actually for both the West and China. It's doing super well in both regions, and Daniel Ahmad, a analyst who does spend a lot of time and focus on the Asia region, World of Warcraft also, according to him, is doing really well in the East. So basically, there you go. World of Warcraft's doing absolutely incredibly. I have to wonder, how much of this is down to different factors. There's a bit of me that's thinking, well, they've made gearing more reasonable. A lot of us have talked about in the last 2 weeks how it's pretty sweet that we can log in, have clear goals for our character, and not be on some sort of treadmill of, the old Skinner box like things they did in the past. I have to wonder if this is a thing where that's really resonating with people. And WoW's doing pretty decently anyway because of, other factors like Classic. And if that's what's, leading to Shadowlands doing super well. Certainly, it's an interesting situation. We were at such a terrible place at the start of BFA. Then Classic came out, the WoW subs doubled. Then they started talking about WoW going in a different direction. Now, there are obviously issues with Shadowlands, sure, but I have to wonder if this validates a change in direction for the team. Or if that's just the sort of thing that only, the 1% of nerds who actually talk about WoW on the internet like us care about. Okay, next up, Covenant. So, balance concerns, all of that stuff obviously existed in beta, and now we actually get to see how things are really lining up in terms of player choices, where WoWranks.io is actually giving us, very, very large sets of statistics from max level, I believe from max level characters, or, ones that are sort of scraped by the API. And basically, what we want to know is, are people going with what they want, or are they just going with meta? And overall there, I would say ish. So it is the case that on almost every spec in the game, there is a dominant Covenant, a really dominant Covenant. And then there's at least 1 to 2 dead Covenants, like legit, pretty much dead Covenants. So what we're going to do is just go through our team. So, both of my Hunter specs, massively Night Fae. That was handy because I was going to go Night Fae anyway, but yeah, if you did not want to be a Night Fae Hunter, it seems like not that many people are going with the other choices. Matt's Holy Paladin is a bit wild. Carrion leads in Holy Paladin, having 12 times more than the number 2 spot, which is Venthyr, and the other 2 being totally dead. Rory's Ret Paladin is also massively Carrion leaning, though Venthyr and Carrion are both, I'd say, considered to be balanced in the overall meta, just having different kits. That explains their numbers. Jared's Unholy DK leans massively Necrolord, so there's barely any for the others. Nikki's Havoc DH is mostly Venthyr, with lots of Carrion and a little bit of Night Fae, and it's actually a bit more spread around than most, though Venthyr is the raiding pick, and also is the primary choice there. John's Frostmage is 50k Venthyr, 30k Night Fae, and only 4k for the other 2. And generally, if you hit up the guides, you will see that Venthyr is bis most of the time, with there maybe being Night Fae for AoE and M+. So that's what it's like for, just a little sample of our team. Overall, I think trends very much do follow the data here, right? I mean, there's a lot of natural pairings. Unholy DKs being Necrolords, Paladins being Carrion. Those kind of fit fantasy-wise. But there clearly always are going to be odd fantasy pits, Necrolord Paladin that someone will do for RP and will just naturally be a bit more rare, even, regardless of, of the numbers. I do think, though, it's very clear that a lot of people are just following what the guides are saying, are good, because that's generally what we're seeing across all of the data. So I suppose what I really want to know from you is, how is this going? Have you made your choice based on what you actually want, or is it based on power? Are you content with where you are with Covenants, or do you feel like this is a system where you've had to strong arm it a bit, and basically, would you rather a situation where you could choose the Covenant power kit and the actual Covenant your character is in a separate manner? I would love to know how this is actually occurring, especially now that we're, just about to start the raid. Speaking of the raid, some interesting things there with people saying that Heroic Nathria is actually a bit harder than expected. And I actually think that's probably a decent enough thing. There's also a few factors, like we're less geared than we normally would be going into a new raid tier, right? We just are. There's no Titan Forging in the game. You're not going to be getting higher than Mythic plus 0 gear in week 1 and week 2 of Shadowlands, so you can't just do the lottery again and again and again and again and hope to Titan Forge a little bit more. And with Titan Forging it would just mean that, like, if you were a normal raider, you totally have, heroic-ish level gear after a tier. So I think that stuff just means that fundamentally where your character's at is going to be a lot more reflective of what it's doing, and for a lot of people that means they're not going to get upgrades that the game just kind of gave to them by throwing more time into the Titan Forged grinder. And then also I've got to wonder if the slower pace of gearing and Blizzard seemingly being willing for Heroic Nathria to be decently challenging, I do have to wonder if that indicates that modern WoW is actually content going for a little bit of a slower burn in terms of the pacing of some of this content. I mean, that's certainly something that a lot of people I think would approve of. So an interesting situation. We'll have to see how it develops. Okay, so it's week 3 of Shadowlands, which means season 1 is beginning. Now, the fun there is the Battleground bonus event and the Brawl is up. To me, that's now exciting because I care about getting honor and I really enjoy doing BGs in my character. So there you go, that's no longer a dead thing to me. Thanks for adding a vendor, guys. Then, right, PvP rated stuff and Mythic Plus, that's all going to be stuff you can do now. And there are item level caps within week 1 for just some of that content. You can see it up on the screen. Blizzard just made a blue post, and it's stuff that generally makes sense for balance. Now in PvP, I'm interested because we can earn 550 conquest a week. From there, basically, you can just get the gear from the conquest vendor and then upgrade it with honor based on your rating, which I think is a pretty exciting new system. It definitely means that's something I'm going to be doing alongside raiding, so that's pretty hype. Definitely want an RBG team to be going. Now for raiding and Mythic Plus, it really is the usual, bar just a little bit of a throttling on end of run loot for Mythic Plus, but again, that's just because Blizzard don't want you to be able to, I guess, get like Mythic raid quality gear in week 1 of the season, so fair enough. Also, unranked PvP item level upgrades, you're going to be able to get those a little bit higher once you get your Renown this week from your Covenants, that's pretty cool. And Soulbinds, there's I think a little bit more on the Soulbinds this week too. Quite a lot of stuff going on for our characters. Really, it's week 3 that so much of the expansion opens up with, of course, Torghast up to layer 6 being open, and then next week is when layer 8 is open of Torghast, and we'll really have to see whenever Twisting Corridors actually rears its head and appears as a thing that we can do. Now, another thing there, just speaking of Torghast, makes us think of legendaries. Well, on that, the legendary drop rate from Nathria is 100%. So very much, I think that's Blizzard being pretty good. I think they know that those legendaries, you just want to do the content, get the legendary, and then the gameplay of that system is in the simple acquiring and then the fun of being able to swap them and mix them and match them and have them be a vector of character, just sort of progression and customization. Okay, that is so much of the gameplay stuff done for this hit of the WoW news. Finally, though, there is the Castle Nathria ending, so obviously a bit of spoilers here, but surprise, surprise, we do win. We do beat Denathrius, but he lives. He's saved by his sword. Now, his sword, I've got to wonder, is that a Mournblade? Is that something that was made by the rune carver, and what's really going on there? But anyway, he gets sucked into the sword. We end up grabbing the sword, and Denathrius gets the light torture that he subjected so many to, which is, of course, lots of poetic justice and a better situation for that Naru than being locked up in the Sanguine Depths. Interesting enough situation where basically Ranithal believes that Denathrius can be redeemed. That does show that Ranithal totally is a Venthyr, a big Revendreth person who knows what the entire point of Revendreth is, unlike Denathrius, who clearly got a bit twisted. Does make us wonder, will Denathrius be redeemed? Will the prince be proven right or wrong? And how will that actually tie into the future? Because what I'm thinking there is that sword has been introduced. It's a talking blade. Those are usually important. And yeah, I mean, it's a Mournblade. what, or probably is a Morin blade, so made by the Rune Carver, what's its connection to other things. And then also, Denathrius is living. Now, Denathrius, we believe, was basically a big sort of architect of, the Dreadlords going out. You've seen our lore video on that. He's obviously someone in league with the Jailer as well. Now, that's the thing. If it's possible to turn him over to our side, then he can basically spill the beans on all of that stuff that's been going on. But that said, might take a long time to not make Denathrius be an arrogant prick who's not our friend. And overall with this, my read in the lore is that the prologue is almost over. And that's really how I describe it. It's a prologue. Because what have we done? Well, we've established what the hell the Shadowlands is. It took so much time to do that world building and establish that stuff, and not much has really happened, right? There's these plots that we've sort of foiled and stuff like that. But that's kind of like, special forces behind the scenes, sneaky stuff. The actual main thrusts of the story haven't really happened yet, but the puzzle pieces have been sort of put in place. So I think that means that once the patches start to roll out, we're going to get some pretty damn big lore as we actually see the Jailer and Sylvanas actually make their moves. Blizzard are in a situation where I think people are not mega sucked in by the plotline right now, because it's not like one sort of super easy to follow thing. There's like a lot of little bits and secrets. There's stuff like people fight Davos at the end of a dungeon, yet they haven't seen her story yet because the Covenant campaign hasn't went through. So it's like we're just at that sort of pre-launching the rocket stage with the narrative. And that's definitely something that has its pros and its cons. There is things I love, like, say, The Expanse. And you could definitely say that The Expanse suffers from very much a lot of plot and exposition in its first few episodes, but that sets it up having an incredibly fast pace and generally being quite lean later on. And I think that's probably what's happening in Shadowlands, because Blizzard had to establish so much stuff. Perhaps similar to how in BFA they had to re-establish Kulturas and Zandalar in quite a big way. So interesting stuff for the lore, but I think we're basically primed for stuff to really start to kick into gear. They've been teasing us so much and hinting at things. It's now time to deliver and show the goods. So I suppose BlizzConline in February is when we're going to get our first proper tease of that, when we find out what the rest of the patch themes of at least some of this expansion, are going to be. That's basically it for today's WoW news. Really, I just wanted to discuss that Covenant stuff, this sales, WoW seemingly being at its top performance perhaps ever, especially financially, because they're making more money per sub now than they would have in the past because of the sale or the store stuff and all of that. Interesting situation. I think it certainly means whoever is deciding the budget of the WoW team, you boys have got no excuse to cheap out. None at all. None at all. WoW is so damn big that it should never feel like that team is as starved of time and resources that somehow, sometimes I think, does actually feel like they are a bit starved. So yeah, there's the situation. That's basically it for me. Let me know what you think. If you want more cool stuff, hit up the Patreon. And yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.